Hi everyone, welcome to topic 4B part 8 where we continue talking about taking the lead. We're just going to recap now those 7 important questions way back in week 2 of the course. First of all, hopefully you've come to a place where you can argue to your own satisfaction whether leaders are born or made, that you understand for you what makes an effective leader, that you clearly understand the difference between leadership and management and how they work together, that you have determined for yourself whether there are differences between male and female leaders, and if there are, what differences they are to you, that you understand how to evaluate effectiveness and not fall into the hole of leadership fads, that you have come to a place where you've determined whether leadership is about orchestrating change or not, thinking about the models of leadership that we've promoted and what that means to individual performance. In general, it tends to assume that the leader orchestrates change and that we have organisational goals that are mandated that we have to win, in saying that we don't necessarily have to do that. So hopefully you've argued that well in your leadership portfolio. And lastly, this idea of Sinclair is that we ignore longer term and deeper questions about leadership, and I want you to think about, do we do that? And Sinclair argues that she feels we do. I want you to justify whether you agree with her. Sinclair wants us to understand that there's a bit of a key fantasy of leadership, that leaders kind of stand outside the power relations that they're embedded in. We don't really talk about how important power is in leadership, so do think about that for yourselves. She also wants us to understand what structural and sort of systemic basis of practice we have around leadership, and actually think a bit more about our own organisational experiences beyond personal problems. So actually think what's right and what's wrong with our organisations. And one of those things is not actually being explicit about where the power lies. We often just tend to ignore it. Think about how our culture sort of regulates how we deal with things at work, and how it also prevents us sort of discussing those undiscussable leadership questions. One comment that Sinclair made in teaching leadership to MBA students in that particular paper was that leadership was seen to be men's knowledge, and having a woman teaches it puts power in the wrong hands, which is quite an interesting view, which I found interesting as well, seeing as I am a woman teaching leadership, just the same kind of issue. So think about whether that affects your views, whether who is guiding you through this project affects it, and equally if your own gender affects how you learn. The other thing, however, that Sinclair does say is that both men and women have gender, and they have gender constraints. So she talks in her article about Connell's idea of hegemonic masculinities, and that sort of means that men in leadership are also disciplined by stereotypically gendered expectations. So something else to think about, and ensure that you weave these 7 questions into your portfolio.